Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well, safe, enjoying the amazing breezy weather that we're having today. Firstly, ما بطول عليكم اليوم كلش. Firstly, أول شيء, I would really like to welcome on behalf of Bahrain Society for Training and Development and its board members, I would like to welcome everyone to this hour, which will be filled with gaining new knowledge and sharing valuable experiences. Our session this week will be titled, or is titled, Reframing Organizations, as sessions which will shed a new light and perspective on organizations, especially for leaders and managers. Tonight's session will be delivered by Ms. Mona Al-Abbas. Before we begin, please allow me to briefly introduce our speaker and her expansive background. Firstly, Mona is a leader and an entrepreneur in the field of human resources management, with 19 years of experience. Mona obtained her MBA from the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, United Kingdom, and a Bachelor's of Arts in Business Administration Systems, first class honors, mashallah. Her entrepreneurial ventures started when she founded Enrich Statistical Consultancy in 2016, and also co-founded New Management Consultancy in 2017, where many services are offered, HRM and data analysis are being some of them. Mona also serves as a part-time HRM lecturer at the University of Strathclyde in its Bahrain Center, and is also a trainer who has conducted human resource management related training courses or sessions. In terms of professional association, Mona is a founding member of Bahrain HR Professionals Toastmasters Club and is currently serving as the VP Education during the club's first term. She's a professional member in our beloved society, the BSTD, and is also a member of Bahrain Statistical Society. I must say, Mona, you have a well-rounded experience and exposure, especially in the HRM field. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for providing us the time and actually for giving us the opportunity to share and learn from your experiences. Without further ado, the mic is all yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Latifa, for this wonderful introduction. And thank you to BSTD for allowing me to share some of the knowledge in this session. And thank you for all the attendees. I hope that this session will be beneficial for you. So I'll start sharing my screen. I hope it works perfectly fine. Can you see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So today's session is entitled Reframing Organizations, Artistry, Choice, and Leadership. I'll move fast so we maintain the schedule. So the objectives of this session is to understand why organizations are complex and not easy sometimes to understand, and to explain the multi-frame thinking or the reframing concept, and to explore how we can apply this reframing concept in everyday life of organizational life. So who should know about this? Basically, anyone who wants to understand the current situation in his or her organization, what's going on in the organization, and anyone who wants to analyze an organizational challenge or a problem they are currently facing, and who wants to plan for change or going through change, especially with the current situation of the pandemic. As you all know, many organizations are going through so many changes due to this pandemic. Some are restructuring, some are downsizing, some are maybe merging, or even the employees, some of them, they have additional duties due to downsizing. So everything is changing, and people need to be going through that change with the tools that help them to understand what's going on and to ease that change for them. So we'll begin this session by exploring why organizations are complex. There are many reasons for the organization to be complex, but the main reasons, because there are multiple stakeholders like the customers, the suppliers, the competitors, the investors themselves. So each have their own interests or goals. Similarly, there are different organizational structures. There are different divisions and different hierarchical levels. Also, in any organization, you will find different types of people with different backgrounds and interests, different departments, technologies, and goals. And usually these organizations, and I'm sure you will agree with me, organizations are always full of surprises. There are sudden changes maybe in the structure or acquisition or a new project or shift in focus. So always there is something new in the organization. And as well, organizations sometimes can be deceptive in terms of the employees. They hide information or they cover up their mistakes and miscommunicate with others. And because of all of the above, the ambiguity is usually very high in organizations. And because of this ambiguity, it is difficult for managers or leaders to manage the organization or predict its behavior in the future, or even employees as well. So as a result of this complexity and ambiguity, people in organizations tend to respond in several ways, but mainly they either blame people for what is going on, either they blame their attitudes, their bad personalities, or their incompetencies, because it's easy to blame people. When you blame people, it means you will find someone guilty to throw that, let's say, problem on. And by that, you will actually not investigate very well why this problem arose at the first place. People also, they tend to blame the bureaucracy. Either we have a very bureaucratic organizations, like very stiff with rules and regulation or red tape, or the opposite, the lack of proper goals and procedures. For example, people can say the 9/11, if we have more intelligence collaboration, this might, we could have avoided 9/11, or 2008 financial crisis. If we have more rules and governance procedure, we might avoided the financial crisis. So they tend to blame things related to the bureaucracy. Similarly, people also will always try to hold to power or have power. They think that organizations are mainly sort of jungles filled with predators and prey, and they want to have a stake of that power. And I can share with you an example of an organization who their bosses, for the thrift of power, they actually made so many mistakes in terms of forcing the external auditors to have positive reports. And that organization is an American, I think, organization called Enron Corporation. And due to that, they falsified the audit and they gave positive reports. The shareholders lost more than 74 million, not only in dollars, but in assets and so many things. So this kind of responses that managers or people in the organization tend to respond to the complex or the ambiguity in organizations because they don't have a clue what's going on. So are we stuck in a frame? Usually people, when they don't know what to do, they do more of what they know. So they are stuck in their own prison. And I myself, one day, or maybe every day, I'm stuck in my own prison. I recall one of the challenges I faced in one of my previous experiences. I was in charge of the HR department, and one employee in the HR department always had issues with the admin manager, always created problem, lies, rumors, And I didn't figure out why he is behaving in this way. And I thought maybe he just simply doesn't like him. There's a clash of personalities or something related to that. And I didn't figure out why the HR employee always made problems to the admin manager. I'm sure each one of us had also similar experiences in terms of challenges in the organization. And sometimes we don't know what to do because our image of a situation is not correct, or let's say not complete. And when our image is not correct, our actions as well will be not correct. Imagine you are navigating Paris with a map of London. That will be off the track. These two companies provide a very good example of being stuck in a frame. Can we have the participants share their information about how these organizations were not able to break their frames or be successful?
Sure.
Anyone would like to share their thoughts or ideas?
Can either raise your hand, or we're actually going, or you can type in the chat.
Okay. For Kodak, one employee in the mid of 70s, he invented the digital camera. And the management response was, it's cute, but don't tell anyone about it. Why? Because the management mental frame was the film industry, and they couldn't refocus to the digital world. So basically, I think in 2012, they filed for bankruptcy. And for Xerox, their scientists as well invented the personal computer and the mouse. And the focus was for Xerox purely was on the photocopying industry. So they couldn't support or nurture that invention. And ultimately, Microsoft and Apple commercialized the PC, and of course, Xerox lost that market. So imagine how being stuck in a frame can damage your organization. And this is actually happening in our organization. We are seeing only part of the picture, but there are a lot more outside that frame of the picture. A frame is a mental model, a set of ideas and assumptions that you carry in your head to help you understand and negotiate a particular territory. So much more outside the frame than in the frame. So if framing involves matching mental maps to circumstances, reframing requires another skill, the ability to break the frames. Why we need to break the frames? Because managers and leaders, they need to investigate other options. They need to see things from other angles. So breaking frames will allow the people not to be stuck in their own mental frame. So reframing is about taking a different perspective on the same situation. Managers who use the same tool or the same method for every situation and expect to find proper solutions, they will be confused and will not find the proper solutions to their challenges. Experienced manager, they know that they have a tool and they know when to use that tool and for which situation. For that reason, the 4 frames, I'm trying just to minimize the. For that reason, Bolman and Deal, they are the author of the 4 frames or reframing concept. They developed this framework that they think that the organization can be viewed from 4 different perspectives. The structural frame, the human resources frame, the political frame, and the symbolic frame. The structural frame views the organization as a factory or machine that focus mainly on the rules and roles and the goals and the policies and procedure. And the leadership role here is like an engineer or an architect who needs to design that structure in order to fit the structure to the environment to achieve the organizational goals. The human resources frame views the organization as a family that cares a lot about their employee needs, skills, and the relationships between the employees. And the leadership here is an empowering leader that try to align the organizational needs with the people needs. The political frame views the organization as a jungle with lots of conflict, competition, and organizational power in order to gain organizational politics in order to gain power. And the leadership here is an advocate who develops agenda and power base in order to achieve the organizational goals. The last but not least frame is the symbolic frame, which views the organization as a carnival or a theater that focus on the culture, meaning, the ceremony, the stories that are told over and over again, and the heroes that people look up to. And the leader is an inspirational leader that creates beauty and meaning to the employees and the organization. Now, each frame of these frames are powerful by its own, but viewing the organization from the four perspectives will provide the leader with a more comprehensive view of what's going on in the organization, and also will provide him with the interlinks between these four different frames and how one frame status affects the status of the other frames. Now we'll go through each frame in brief. The first frame is the structural frame. It's all about rationality and the how of change. It focuses on the design of the units and subunits, the rules and roles, the goals and policies, measuring these goals and organizational metrics. And all of this shapes the channel of decisions and activities. The basic challenge of the leaders who are working within the structural frame is how to differentiate between the different divisions of labor or dividing the work and integrating these efforts at the same time. Usually, dividing the work or division of labor happens around either the function or the time. Maybe they are having different shifts, the products, different product line, the customers, or the geographical area, or the processes itself. So in order for them to coordinate the efforts of these different divisions or departments, they need to integrate. Integrate in order for units to have the full picture, not focus only on their local concerns and as a department or division. So there is two ways of integration here, either the vertical integration, which is through the hierarchical authority and the rules and the procedure in place. And this is usually useful or working best in a stable environment where everyone knows their role. The second way of integration is the lateral integration, which is usually through meetings, matrix structure, network structure, and the like. And this works best in a fast-changing environment. So one of the tools that can aid the organizations or leadership in organization to understand or even design their structure is Mintzberg 5 configuration. Mintzberg, he divided any organization structure into 5 different, let's say, employee levels. The strategic ethics, usually the people at the top who shape the organization strategy and vision and mission, the middle management, the operating core, the people who are actually doing the main job, like if it's a school, the teachers, if it's a hospital, the doctors themselves. And the technical staff, who usually they are analysts who devise the different standard operating procedures, the metrics, and they analyze and measure the performance, and the support staff who support the general operations. So he divides 5 configurations depending on the size of the organization, the age of the organization, the environment, even the processes and the type of people they employ. So the first one is simple structure, usually found in startups. You can see there are not a lot of layers, so it's a very simple structure. There is the machine bureaucracy, usually for big organizations with that they are heavily standardized, like McDonald's. Professional bureaucracy, usually found in universities and consultancy firms, where the intellectual abilities or capabilities of the staff are very important. The divisional form, usually found in global organizations, where each branch may be in a different location and have their own structure. And the adhocracy, which is usually found in the music industry or the art and recording industry, where there is no clear identification of the structure. This is just a brief. Of course, there are more information about this 5 configuration that you can find online, or if you need more information, you can simply contact me later and I will share with you all the information. But this will give you just an idea of how organizations usually structured, and you might find something similar to your organization. But with these different configurations, do we need to manage people differently? Pay close attention to the size of each level of the employees. The bigger the size of that level means they have more authority and maybe more power, and hence they need to be managed in a different way. Well, let's have an example of 2 different organizational structures, McDonald's and Harvard University. Please, if anyone would like to share their thoughts about these 2 companies, they can do. I'll just continue because I'm not sure if anyone to participate, but feel free to participate anytime. So McDonald's have a huge number of employees around the world with many, many franchisees. And they are heavily centralized, and the people or the employees, they don't have any discretion on how things should be done. The Mac Burger and Senate branch should be the same Mac Burger in maybe Mexico or in Indonesia or whatever, and wherever in this world. So imagine how standardized they are. And their operation is heavily influenced by the technology. As of Harvard University, they have a few locations in the UK with limited number of professors and staff. And they are decentralized, and each faculty or department have their own education system, their own way of doing things, because professors usually they want to have control over how they deliver, how they do research and development, and they won't accept people managing the way they teach or reach to research and development. So layers also are less in Harvard and McDonald's. So both are successful organizations despite the structural change, because it all depends on the organization itself and its circumstances. Do you have any questions before I move to the human resources frame? Shall I continue?
Continue.
Okay. So we move to our beloved frame. We as HR professionals, we love this frame. I'm sure BSTD members also will love this, are already in love with this frame. This frame focuses on the employees and their needs and empowering them. It views the organization as a big extended family, and they consider the feelings and the relationship between the staff. And the key here is to tailor organizational requirements with the individual needs. So this frame, as you can see, is heavily influenced by psychology, because understanding the needs and personalities of different people in the organization needs a lot of effort from the leadership. And that's why understanding the needs and nurturing people, empowering them, making them engaged in with the organization is not an easy task. Many theorists and researchers have studied the nature of human needs and personality within organization in order to better align employee needs to organizational requirements. For example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, theory X or theory Y, that have different views about basic needs or higher level needs. So it is not easy for management or leadership to understand the needs and the personalities, how to motivate people, and how to engage people. On top of that, global competition and the current turbulence, the rapid changes that is happening, intensified organizational dilemma. Should organization be lean and mean or invest in people? By lean and mean, I mean that organizations usually tend to prefer reducing costs through having maybe part-time employees, contractors, or temporary staff. They will reduce the cost, yes, but at the same time, they will lose the loyalty and talent of the employees. If, on the other hand, they invested in people, they will have well-trained employees, they will have more motivated and loyal employees, but at the expense of the time and resources. And that is not, might be not viable on the long term, because we don't know how long the relationship between the employees and the organization will last. So this type of turbulence provide many challenges to the leadership in terms of human resources and catering to employee needs. So what we can do to improve the human resources situation in our organization? The key here is to develop a comprehensive HR strategy that have a shared philosophy to manage people and reward employees reward employees well and promote from within. Also to invest in learning and development and to encourage autonomy and participation, and also to promote diversity and self-managing teams. Procter & Gamble provide a very good example of how human resources frame implementation can provide positive results to organizations. At a certain stage in the Procter & Gamble organizational life, they were heavily relied on the authority and the rationality and the structure, but there was a tension between the unions and the management. There was misunderstanding, mistrust, and this continued for a long time. So the Procter & Gamble management decided to employ, I think somebody called David, I'm not sure the name, and he applied the human resources concept to one of the plants, Procter & Gamble. He made an open door policy and improved the communication between management and staff. He also encouraged self-managing team. And the result was around 30% improvement in the productivity of that plant. And it was the most productive plant among all plants in Procter & Gamble. Okay, we'll move now to the political frame. I know politics sounds scary. Who feels this way when he or she hears the word politics? I can't see, I can't hear, I can't talk. To be honest, politics and organization will always persist, and it will be naive if we think that politics and organization will ever be vanished. The process of political environment and organization usually is in the heart of decision making, especially at time of there is shortage of resources or scarcity of resources, because in this frame, the organization will decide who gets what and when. So you will find in this frame, you will find a focus on different people and the different interests of those people. So different groups and organizations will have their own interest, personal interest for their personal advancement, and they have their usually hidden agenda, sometimes unfortunately at the expense of others. And leaders need to manage this in a positive way. It's not always negative to be politically savvy. There is always a positive way to manage things and a politically heavy politically environment. So in this frame, it views the organization as arenas and contests or jungles, and that conflict is widespread because of the difference of needs between different people, and that grouping forms around specific interests, and that problems arise when power is concentrated in the wrong place. So as I said, the basic challenge of leadership who are working within the political frame is how competing groups articulate preferences and mobile power to get what they want. Who gets what, when, and how. There is a way, as I said, always a positive way to manage the political environment by adopting a political strategy. This strategy simply is 4 steps. The first step is to set the agenda, where you can define the objective of the project or initiative or the central issue that people disagree about. So you clarify the objective and you clarify how you will achieve those objectives. Then you move to mapping the political terrain, and by that I mean to clarify who are your key players and this initiative that might or have a big effect on the success of your initiative. And you need to focus on those people in order to take them to your side. And there is a very interesting tool that you can achieve that through. I call it the political map, as you can see here. The political map is basically you are mapping the different stakeholders or key players into 2 dimensions, that is power and interest. So the people who have high power and high interest in your initiative is your promoters. you need to focus all your most of your attention to this group, and you need to manage them closely. The group of people, however, who have high power but low interest in your initiative, they need to be kept satisfied by addressing their needs. The group of people who are highly interested in your initiative but have low power, they are your defenders who will always defend your initiative and push for it, and they need to be kept informed about the progress of your initiative. The last group, people who have low power and low interest, so they are not your focus and you just need to monitor them. So after clarifying who are your key stakeholders that will affect your initiative, you need to start networking and building collisions with them. And by clarifying their needs and your needs and what interests they have, you start bargaining and negotiating in order to achieve a win-win situation. But be aware that this strategy and all the steps happening in this political strategy must always take care of the ethics and morality, because without ethics and morality in every step, it will turn to the negative politics that we all dislike in our offices. So we need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's why we need to ensure that all our agenda setting, finding the key players, networking and bargaining, all within the framework of ethics and morality. So here is a very good example of what happens at organization when they implement, when they are heavily political, unfortunately in a negative way. So in, I think, 1986, NASA launched the space shuttle, the Challenger, and 73 seconds after its launch, it exploded, killing all 3 crew members, including a female teacher who was with them. And it was a disaster. NASA did not run this program alone. It was part of a coalition. There was the contractors, the White House, the American public, the media, all were somehow involved in this program. And NASA at that time competed for funds, and it was opposing the interest of the American public to have lower taxes. So money and time was at stake, and they needed to maintain the schedule. So what happened actually, that there was the explosion happened because of an O-ring failure in one of the joints, that it wasn't designed for a very cold weather that existed at the same day of the launch. And the contractor engineers warned their management about this issue, but because the contractor management wanted to please NASA and they didn't want to lose them as a client, they had a huge contract with a huge money involved in it. So NASA was frustrated that they didn't want to change the schedule. So the contractor managers, they used their authority and they approved the launch, despite that their engineers were warning them many months before, and the disaster happened. So these types of things happen in our organizations. I'm sure you might have so many experience related to having wrong decisions because power was maybe concentrated in a wrong place, or people didn't have the political mindset to achieve what they want in a positive way. So the last frame is the symbolic frame, which is all about the organizational culture. and how culture can facilitate change. This frame views the organization as I said, like a theater or a carnival that have their different players and or actors that they play their roles and the organizational drama with audiences form impressions. And this symbolic frame also, what happens is not very important, but what is more important is what it means. The meaning is more important than the product of what's happening. And culture viewed here as the glue that holds an organization together. The basic organizational challenge in this frame is how to create a positive and cohesive culture. I'm sure we are familiar with these phrases. The way we do things around here. Organizational culture eats a strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Indeed, that's correct, because when things are being done repetitively over time, it becomes the different facets of the organizational culture. Things might work positively in the early days of the organization, but it's not necessarily working for the current situation or even for the future direction of the organization. So usually culture is heavily influenced by the different behaviors of the early founders of the organization that might carry on throughout the years. So how to make sure that we have a positive culture that acts as a competitive advantage to the organization rather than hindering its progress. So the organization culture can be revealed or communicated through many organizational samples, like myths, the vision statement, the values that are promoted, the heroes or figures of the organization that people look up to and their wisdom or theory or stories that they tell over and over again, and they become like a fairy tale for the success of the organization. It also happens through the organizational rituals and ceremony and the different metaphors used and the humor and play inside the organization. So when the organization is having the proper culture, team building will be easy. There will be less conflict between the employees, and there will be more harmony in the organization because people, they know what's proper and not proper, and it will also act as a guidance to the employee behavior. And Continental Airlines in 1994 serves a good example of how to apply the symbolic frame in a positive way. Back in 1994, Continental Airlines was the worst in flight timing. It was very bad in handling luggages and had the most customer complaints. And of course, they were losing a lot of money. And at that time, a new manager came and tried to implement some of the concepts of the organizational culture. So he had opened the suits to all the employees to have organizational ceremonies and parties. And this actually motivated staff more and created a cohesive culture that after some time, Continental Airlines won many customer, I think something related to customer satisfaction awards. And it continued to be professional, continued to be profitable until I think in 2012 they merged with, I think, American Airlines. So they remained profitable because they employed different concepts of the symbolic frame or the organizational culture. So to wrap it up, we can say that the benefits of reframing, of course, they have many benefits, but it allow leaders to have multiple angles of any situation. So they don't narrow their thinking on one frame or one concept. So they can be more aware of what's happening in their organization by looking at the same situation from different angles. So reframing seeks to avoid the temptation for leaders to become stuck or viewing and acting on conditions through one lens or frame. And leaders can use the frame as scenarios or scripts to generate alternative approaches to challenging situations. They can also examine and analyze the interlinks between the different frames and understand how the state of one frame affects the state of others. Usually when we are faced with a problem, we tend to think either is it structure in one situation, and another situation, maybe it's related to employee motivation, so we'll work on within the HR frame. In another situation, we might think of the culture. We always think of these things in a separate way, alone, the culture alone, the structure alone. But when we think of them all together, we will see how one affects the other. And then we will understand more the roots of the problem, and we will have a better decision making. So once leaders master all four perspectives, they will be more artistic and addressing organizational challenges and developing their organizations. So, do you have any questions so far?
So far, we have a comment, Mona, that I'd like to share from Nihad. Nihad says that I think lots of local and regional companies ignore the fact that there is a generation gap. Generation Alpha, for example, cannot be managed effectively as other generations. Organizational structure, culture, team behaviors, politics should be fixable enough to sustain talents and maintain its competitive edge. So I think the main focus with, go ahead.
Well, I totally agree with Nihal, right?
Nihad.
Nihad. Yeah. So basically, any organization will need to have a structure, will need to have care for their employees, and will need to manage any negative politics and have their own culture. So in this gap in generation, different generations might exist in the same organization. So leaders, by thinking artistically, as we say, through all these four frames, can find those gaps, how this difference in generation affect all these frames and the behavior of the employees. And they can spot what type of changes required in any of the frame, if changes required in one frame or other or the frames. So of course, not only generation gap provide challenges, different circumstances provide challenges, even change in technology, even what we are going through now, sudden pandemics or economical issues. So yeah, I think these frames will, in my point of view, will provide the right balance, let's say, between management skills and leadership skills. I don't know if people will agree with me, but I find that the structural frame is more like purely management, and the cultural frame is purely leadership, and HR frame and political frame is a mix between management skills and leadership skills. So people would know when to employ more management or when to employ more leadership.
Absolutely. Now we have another question from Mr. Najil Qaroni. What is the difference between reframing versus design in an organization? So I guess it's organization reframing and organization design. What is the difference between them?
Well, I think organization design is more related to the maybe structural frame, maybe a little bit of the HR frame. Like you are designing an organization, if I understood that correctly, means you are designing the division of labor, how things will be working, and how to integrate these different divisions or departments. So you are like an engineer, you are designing the structure of the organization. While reframing is, as I said, the four angles of the organization. It's not only designing, it's your people, it's your political environment and the power and the scarcity of resources and the culture. So it helps in designing the organization. When you have a full comprehensive view of, let's say, the organizational behavior and how things are happening, you will be better able to design your organization. I hope I understood the question correctly.
He says, thank you.
My pleasure. So anyone would like to share a challenge that they faced either recently or and their previous experience that they feel, of course, comfortable to share. They can, of course, keep the names anonymized for confidentiality. No? Then if not, I will share my own experience that I told you about at the beginning of this session, that I faced with my HR employee having issues with admin manager. Despite the HR department and the administration department were two separate departments, so there is no overlap of responsibilities. But this employee kept on creating problems for the admin manager and of course for me and the management, because this was not a healthy situation. At that time, I was not thinking with the four frames concept, and my tenure was actually short, so I didn't have time to reflect. But now, when I reflected on the situation, going through the four frames, I discovered different aspects of the situation. For the structural frame, we went through acquisition at that time when I was there. So the mother company acquired another company which was big, and they inherited so many problems with that company. So there was some basic clarity of rules, but there was a lack of coordination. People didn't know how to coordinate with each other. Some of the roles were a duplicate because of the two entities, and there was no clarity of goals or objectives at all. From the human resources perspective, employees were not empowered, of course, and they were not engaged at all. And employee needs were addressed by the higher management based on leader emotions and the personal relationship between the leader and the employee. So it wasn't addressed on, let's say, rational basis. Regarding the political environment, unfortunately, there was some politics or negative politics going on at certain levels. And the higher management knew about it, but ignored it. And regarding the culture, due to the acquisition, there was, two different cultures and no clear unified culture. And there was no people to look up to, and there was no team cohesiveness at all. So when I think back of the HR employee behavior, I discovered the different, let's say, aspect of that behavior. And my aha moment was when I discovered that it was all about power and competition. Because the HR employee was one of the oldest employees since the beginning of the original or the mother company. And he assisted the owners in company registration and many administration work, and he gained their trust. So he considered himself as one of the family when the organization was still small in size and young in age. And so throughout the time, the owners hired an educated admin manager with high salary and high benefits. And by time he gained, the admin manager gained the owner's trust as well. And they started consulting him on big decisions. So this HR employee felt that he lost part of his power to the admin manager. And hence this problem was arised. This was also coupled with a lack of employee empowerment, and there was no cohesive culture that builds a teamwork spirit at work. So that's why this problem existed. So this framing and reframing or multi-frame thinking concept actually was created by Bullman and Deal, Lee, Bullman, and Terrace Deal. And it was the first development was 25 years back, and they continue developing on the concept. I thought just to share the book with you that explain the concept in details with so many examples and so many theories behind each frame and the thinking behind each frame. And it's worth mentioning that this book is taught to MBA students at the University of Strathclyde as part of the Managing People in Organization module. And I'm sure we have some alumni, Strathclyde alumni with us here, and I'm sure they remember this book very well because it was an interesting module. That's all from me, and I hope this presentation was helpful. I hope that you can see this tool as beneficial because, as I said, it will definitely not find solution to all organizational problems. It's not the ultimate solution. Organizations' problems will always exist, but it will provide you with a way to organize the thinking in order to understand the different links between the four views of the organization and be better equipped to have better decision making. That's all from me, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay. I can hear myself. Okay, we do have a very interesting idea that was provided by Ms. Budur. She actually provided one of the great ideas that can be implemented to bridge the generation gap and contribute to a better organization culture is introducing a mentor-mentee program. So to incorporate a mentor-mentee program in the organization itself to bridge that organization gap, that generation gap.
Very interesting. And I can maybe link it to the HR frame because it is about empowering people and motivating them and making them engaged within the organization. And having this mentor-mentee program is a very powerful tool to engage people. Very excellent remark, Budur. Thank you.
We have a few minutes left, Mona, and there is a question that we have from Mr. Naji. Do you think as an HR professional, the HR practices in Bahrain are mature in comparison to other GCC countries?
Well, I think that's my personal opinion. It's not necessarily true, but I think it's similar within the GCC. The differences is mainly related to the organizations itself, like their size and age. Some organizations are mature enough to have like a very dedicated HR department and separated, let's say, from the admin staff and personnel management. They have dedicated training, dedicated maybe culture change management. So I think it's the status of the HR and GCC more or less are similar.
Do we have any more questions? And we can raise our hand. We have a couple more minutes to go, so. Okay, if that's the case, then everyone is really thanking you. Everyone is saying that this is thank you, informative and nicely presented session. It was really beneficial. If there are no more questions, I wouldn't want to take much of your time. It has very, very mind alerting, I might say, when now you actually have presented ideas in a different way, in an interesting way, especially when it comes to viewing things from different perspectives and applying judgments in different situations to come with different and better outcomes, which is something that, as you mentioned, we are stuck in a way sometimes that we're stuck in a frame and we're not actually, alternating from that. So it has been a very mind-altering and very awakening session.
I'm glad.
It's been perfect. If there is nothing more, we actually will end our session here. Thank you, Mona. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all of your input, for your valuable information that you have shared with us. And in conclusion to tonight's session, and on behalf of Bahrain Society of Training and Development, the board members, I would like to really thank you, Mona, for joining us and for the amazing session. And lastly, great thanks to everyone who has actually participated with the great points, great input, and it might be actually our last session before Ramadan, so it is an excellent opportunity. If anyone else wants to wish everyone Ramadan Kareem, you can open your mics, but كل عام وانتم بخير، ينعاد عليكم كل خير إن شاء الله يا رب.
Thank you, Latifa. Thank you for your amazing assistance, and thank you for PSTD for providing me with this opportunity, and I hope it was beneficial for everyone. And بارك عليكم الشهر in advance, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Have a good night.
Good night.